So I'm back. This is part 2. So this is what it looks like from part 1. Okay, at this point, what I would normally do is I would measure up 1.25 inches, and then I would set a walker knot right here on top of this with all 4 strands. And I'll tell you right now, I use the walker knot like through all the different versions of my slings, but I've decided to change that because I'm trying to eliminate the play between here and the rope where it twists. So that's why I'm doing it this way now. So what I do now, take all my strands here, and I'm going to push this all the way up. This is a good way to tell how close your finger loops are. You can see how close those are. They're pretty much almost exact. So they may be, your loops can't always be perfect every time. It just takes practice. It's just not, you can't expect to get perfect finger loops every time when you first try it. It took me hundreds of tries to do this. So you'll just have to see what works for you. Make sure your loops are pretty decent. And once they are, you can start on the rest of it, okay? And as I said before, I eliminated a knot off the top here because I want less play in the sling. So when I release, I don't have as much twist on my throws. The retaining rope you can just take off. You can take your retaining rope off, and you can take the knot out. Take this half hitch knot out that you use to keep everything even. So take that out. Okay, so I've pressed it all the way to the top. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with a 4-strand round braid right off the bat. And getting it braided up in here is going to be a little bit harder. So you got to kind of mess with it a little bit until you get started. Once you do, then you can set this and start your 4-round braid. So I'll just start right now by doing the 4-round braid by hand right now. And get it as tight as I can up inside that hole. Okay, so I'm going to start a 4-strand round braid right now. I'm just doing this by hand until I can get it started. You want to get it tight, so you want to pull it up inside there, inside the area that slips too, because you've created a slip knot here. Like I said before, if you make this nice and tight, you won't be having too much slippage. What I usually do is, you can retain this, or you can hold this whatever way you have to. If you have a loop or you have a little hook, it's even better. But I'm just going to set this in here. Just something to hold it for me so I don't have to sit here and work so hard at it. So I'm going to set that in there to hold that. There's probably a ton better ways of doing it, but keep going on my round braid. Like I said, make it nice and tight. It needs to be tight all the way down. That round braid, I always make it super tight. And I'll just show you real quickly. The round braid's pretty simple. If you don't know how to do a round braid, it's going to look like a plus sign. Okay, I take the top one, goes down to the right. Okay, the top one goes down to the right, the bottom one goes up to the left. Okay, now you work on the side pieces. The left side goes down to the right, and the right side goes up to the left. This pattern is going to stay the same all the way through. Sorry, last time I didn't edit out some of the long portions of it where it was just repetitive, but I don't know what happened. Hopefully I'll get this one sped up for you so you can see it. So I'm going to start braiding this all the way down. And this is where the time-consuming portion of it really, it's going to take a while. So this could take up to 3 hours to do if you're slow, and if you're fast, it'll go quicker. So let's see where we're at. We're about 4 more inches. All right, so I usually stop it just right before the 24. Doing 2 more knots probably. Okay, so the top one, and where I usually stop is on the side. So I've already done the last up and down one, okay? So I'm pretty much here at the 24. I mean, it's up to you. I usually stop it slightly short because over time this is going to stretch a little bit. So it's probably going to at least stretch a quarter. It could stretch up a little bit more than that. Now this is where you want to start tying your knots correctly. I've got the 2 strands that are going vertically up and down. Now the 2 horizontal strands, this is what I do, okay? In order for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the cup spread. So I need to stop this knot, okay? So what I do is I take my left cord and I go over my right cord and I do a half hitch, okay? And I'm going to pull this tight. And pull these 2 as tight as I can, okay? So it looks like this. Now what happens is instead of keeping it in the same position, I'm going to take the last part that I tightened it with and I'm going to pretty much put it over to the left and turn it like this. Okay? This is how my cup stays even. Okay, now you have 4 strands coming down side by side straight across. Okay? I'm going to readjust this up so you guys can see it a little better. I'm going to move this up a little bit. Take this off. Okay. So I'm going to put this back in here. You just need something to hold this. So I'm going to have it hang out a little bit. So I can still work on it. Now you can kind of, you want to make sure that the strands on the outer strands stay on top, the inner strands stay underneath in the middle. So it looks just like that. Huh? So now what you're going to do is you're going to keep the 2 inside strands keep all the strands together. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. You know what you did up there, and you're going to do the same thing exact backwards. Okay, so I'm going to separate the two outside strands. I'm going to take the right one. I'm going to go over the left. I'm going to take the left one. And I'm going to go over the right one through the middle and then back down. Okay, there's a half hitch. Okay, now this is the thing. When you want to continue your knot, number one, I want to make this a 6-inch cup. So you want to make sure that this is 6 inches. Now, a lot of people talk about cup size and why they go with what they go with. I've gone with smaller cups and I've gone with larger cups. I've tried all different sorts of sizes of cups. 6-inch cup seems to be what works for me and what works for my throw the best. Now, if you go with a 5-inch cup, I can just tell you, the smaller the cup, the quicker it's going to release. If you're shooting tennis balls, I mean, either way, 6-inch cup has worked great for everything. As far as I'm concerned, 6 inches is what I go with. So what you decide to go with is up to you. But I can tell you right now, if you make this a 5-inch cup, yeah, it will encompass the ball. But two things happen when you make a smaller size cup. When you're spinning and you go to release, something's happening in that cup. And a lot of people don't realize when they're spinning that there's a back and forth motion that happens. It's an oscillating motion that goes like this. Your cup, it's going to shift back and forth. Your ball's going to roll in this cup forward and back. As you rotate your spin, the ball moves back and forth. The smaller the cup, the less room it's going to leave for your projectile to move around as you spin. And that's the number one reason why I don't go with the smaller cup. That you need that extra space for your ball to roll back and forth as you spin. That way your ball and your ropes and everything stay tight as you spin. If you go with the smaller cup, you're going to get a quicker release. And it's just not going to, the spin is not going to be quite as comfortable as what it should be. So that's why I go with the 6-inch spread, okay? So I got about exactly 6 inches in between the knots, okay? Now, so you got the two inner ropes that have been half hitched, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to rotate this middle one counterclockwise just a little bit. So this one becomes your up string, the right side of that, and the other one becomes your down string. This one's the down, this one's the up. I'm hanging onto that half hitch with my finger because if I let go, it's just going to get loose. The real trick to this is you want to keep tension exactly the same on all four if you can do that. So from here, I'm going to start my round braid. Like I said, the right side of the half hitch goes up, the left side goes down. Now I'm just going to start my round braid again right here, and this was what will make it even. The right one on the right will go over the top of the left side will come across underneath the bottom side of the right, okay? And just start your round braid from there. Top goes down to the right, bottom goes up to the left. Keeping the tension on all four of these strings all at the same time, because you need to do this while you're doing this first part of it, so everything stays nice and even. If it slips, you need to fix it. So I'm just going to start my round braid again. Oh, and also, this was the thing I said at the start of the video. This is a 27-inch sling, so I'm at 24 inches to the start of my cup. It's a 6-inch cup, so half 6 is 3. The 24 and 3, that's going to give you a 27-inch sling. If you want to change your sling to a different size, say 30, you're going to want to braid this all the way up to 27. Okay? And then if you're going with a 6-inch cup, you go to 27, make your 6-inch cup, and then start your braid again. 30 will be right here. But in this case, it's a 27-inch sling, so 27 is the dead center. Now back to going. Once you get this part, started, you just keep going. Just keep going. So I'm just going to keep going with my braiding, my round braid. This way everything stays the same. See how it's all the same? You might have to manipulate this a little bit to get it to exactly where you want it. But generally, it's going to be in this position. 2 inner cords, 2 outer cords. So now I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to go for another 8 inches. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and tie this off with another little quick half hitch. Stop it there at 8 inches. I'm going to readjust my sling because I don't need to see anything but only from where my cup starts. So I'm going to go ahead and move this back up so I don't have to keep going back. Okay, now this is where it gets kind of tricky. Okay, so when I first started making slings, I made quite a few of them in a couple different variations, but I got a little bit of advice from a few of the slingers. And number one, Mitch Mercer suggested to me on tapering the sling. I didn't really have an idea on how to do this, but he told me how to do it. So I got to give credit to Mitch Mercer. He's the one that explained how to do this, and he's an expert at slinging. So go check out his videos, Mercer Slings. He's one of the best slingers I've seen, and I compete with him all the time, and I really respect what he has to say. And yeah, so I just had to definitely say that because you got to give credit where it's credit due. You know, you can't just copy somebody's thing and put it out there like it's your own. Because you know, I see guys doing this all the time, and I don't like it. You know, I can't respect that, man. Somebody's going to teach you how to do something. Don't claim it as yours. You know, you just can't do that. So anyways, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the smallest fid tool that I showed you. It looks like a sewing needle. It looks like a giant sewing needle. So if you can see that, it's a giant sewing needle. Okay. What you're going to do is you're going to separate one thread off of each one of these. Okay. And you don't want to do it in the same place. You want to start here. You can start like a 1/4 inch down. The next one will be a 1/2 inch down or 3/4 of an inch. The third one will be an inch or so. And the fourth one will be a little more than an inch. If you taper your ropes all in the same place, you'll see a reduction all in the same spot. And then if you have any loose rope or any of that, it'll all be in the same area. It's better to spread it out over, you know, a couple inches. That way it's more consistent looking, and it's just nicer. It looks a lot better. I have separated them all together in the same spot, but it looks kind of sloppy. So the easiest way to do this is to take one rope and take the pressure off it and press up. You can kind of see the strands start to separate a little bit. Now it's not going to do that much when you're first doing this, so I always start on these exterior strands, and you got to be real careful. When you stick it through, you don't want to throw it through too many threads. You only want to catch that one thread. So you basically just start pulling the thread out this way with your hand, and you've got to basically pull this down like that. And as Mitch Mercer says, you got to milk it. So pull your thread and then milk this side. You've got to just pull it. You'll see it. Once you start pulling a thread out, it starts to bunch up, and you want to unbunch it. So pull a little bit, and then pull the other one. A little more, and then pull the other one. Now, the first couple of threads are probably the hardest, so just keep doing that until you get that string out of there. This is how you're going to taper your rope. Okay, so it's free now. Basically, I'm just going to take my scissors, which are not here. I'm going to get really quick. Hang on a second. Okay, so I'm just going to slide my scissor up as tight as I can and cut that thread out without cutting the rest of the rope. Okay, Kevlar is really tough. It's fireproof, but it's not waterproof. Water is Kevlar's worst enemy. You really don't want to get Kevlar wet if you can help it. I always treat all my Kevlar slings with beeswax after, just to make sure that it doesn't get wet or get any kind of moisture in there. Once you've cut that off, you want to take it and get it out of the way. And what I usually do is I just take it up here like this. I just make a quick loop just to get out of the way, just so I know that one's done. Leaves me with 3 more. So now what I'll do is I'll come down a little bit farther than I did on the last one, which will be closer to 3/4 of an inch. You want to try to catch the same thread you did on the first one. Okay? So try to catch the same thread out of the same pattern of the rope. Pulling one strand out only. And then you got to milk it out. Pull it. Pull it. This reduction will be pretty much the same all the way down. The hard part is getting the same string every time. Take it up, cut it, get rid of that piece. Take this piece, bring it up to the top, throw it up. That way you know it's done. Move on to the next one. The third one will be something like around an inch down. You want to take your time doing this because, like I said before, you don't want to catch extra threads. If you catch an extra thread, it'll throw off the pattern. You only want to take one strand at a time. And I mean by one strand, Kevlar is super fine, so one strand is actually made up of, I'm not sure, but it's probably like 6 to 8 little smaller threads. So I'm not really sure exactly how much it is, but you can see the strands in there. You just want to take one strand of it. See, if you end up catching more than one piece, it's not the end of the world, but once you start pulling this, it's going to pull that other strand all the way up out of there. So you got to be careful as you do this. It can be tedious. This is probably the most tedious part of the thing. Okay, got that one out. I'm going to cut it. Okay, so I'm on the last one, and I'll come down a little more than an inch. Like I said, I'm trying to catch that same strand on the same side. And you can see the first one I did was up here. The last one I did is down here. That way the strands won't all line up when you go to start rebraiding it again. This is the first reduction, and I do it around 8 inches because it's going to be being between 8 and 9.5. After that, I'm going to reduce it every 3 inches. So basically there's going to be a reduction at 9 inches, 12 inches, 15 inches, 18 inches, and 21 inches. Those are the numbers that you need. It's every 3 inches. Okay, so now that I've reduced every one of these, I've reduced them all by one strand, I take them all back out, and then I continue my round braid again. So I will take out the knot that I put in here. And when you do it, I always try to start with the top strands that are going down to my right. They kind of aim down to the right. I don't like the ones that go to the left. I don't know why it confuses me. So I always try to keep it up. If you actually look down the rope at this period in time, you can actually see a groove that is consistent all the way down. This groove should be consistent. Trying to keep your pouch flat and your top knot up. Okay, so now that I have that, I'll restart my same pattern. Top down to the right, bottom up to the left, left side down to the right, right side up to the left. Okay, and I'll just keep this pattern going for another 3 inches, then I'll do another reduction. Basically, I'm going to keep going until I get to about 11 inches. I usually stop at about an inch short of that mark I told you, because I really want the general amount of reduction just in that zone, which is basically around 12 inches. So I stop around 11. I will stop around 11 and then start my reduction. Same thing with the next one. The next one after 12 would be 15, so I'll stop around 14. Also, something else I forgot to mention, like I think I did mention it, but if you don't cut those pieces exactly tight right up against it, you're going to have little burrs that stick out, and you need super sharp scissors to cut those off with. You can see it's pretty clean. There's no burrs on it, so I don't know. I just got pretty consistent with cutting these. So you got to cut them tight, but don't overcut, because then you'll cut into your strands. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I did last time. I'm going to take the two that are horizontal. I'm going to do basically another half hitch. It's just temporary, so it just stops everything from unraveling. You want to keep everything nice and tight. So now I'm at the 11-inch reduction. It's going to be the same thing. One strand. This would probably help a little bit more if I had it a little more light. But so when you pick your strand, it's critical that you don't just pull all the strands. Right now I'm going to pull the strand out of the same general run of strands. But you're going to run out on this one side, and you're going to have to make decisions on which ones you pull. And the thing is, if you pull the wrong one, at some point it could separate your Kevlar rope, and you could end up with 2 or 3 pieces of it, and you got to watch out. That's why this is going to take a little bit of practice. So I'm basically going to go in to the same group and pull a strand out of there. I'm going to try to pull the same strand out of each rope in the same place. But the length will be slightly different. It'll still be the same pattern I did before. 1/4, 3/4, 1 inch. You don't want them all exactly in the same spot. You just want the same strand. Okay. Take this. I should be extra careful not to cut the rest of the rope. You can mess this up and it's going to be a real hassle the rest of the sling. So take your time pulling these strands out. Those ends if you want it. I don't save them. You can make crackers out of them if you want, but I just use thread. One strand. Okay, so same thing. Take your other pieces out. Undo your half hitch. Just right here. Make sure your sling's pretty much on that line that you want. Find your top knot and start your round braid. Again, make sure everything's tight, because each time you do this, you stand the chance of getting a little play in between your knot, so you want to make sure everything's nice and tight. Continue your pattern down. So We did 8, we did 12. The next one will be at 15, so I'll stop a little bit after 14. You can also see that the Kevlar is starting to look a little different than the other Kevlar that you started with. Starting to thin out and become a little bit more open. If you pick the threads out right, it's going to be a little bit loose when you get done. But the real trick is, and it may or may not happen on this one, you'll see, you really want to end up with a solid piece still. You don't want 3 or 4 different strands coming off of one string, because it just makes it super hard, especially when you try to finish it. You want to keep it to where they're all semi-intact. Even with 2 reductions, you can already see it's getting quite a bit thinner. Now this is the thing, I've done a lot of tapering on these, and there's a certain amount of taperage you want. You don't want to taper it down to 0 like they do over in Spain or in the Ibiza Islands. They make it go down all the way down to 0. Well, the thing is with Kevlar, if you make it go all the way down to 0, a couple things will happen. I taper it this way because it still allows me a certain shot. You taper it too much and what starts happening is your release starts becoming quick again. And when you get down to 0, you get a really tiny taper on this thing, and you have no resistance weight. I call it resistance weight because when you let go of your sling, there's a certain amount of resistance that you need on the other side of your sling that helps retain your ball for that split second. And if you change that taper too much, you're not going to get enough resistance on your throw, and your ball will release super fast. The other reason why you don't want to taper it all the way down to 0 or down to really thin is because where you actually grip onto the sling, it'll become a weak spot, and your sling won't last as long. So there's a fine line between tapering enough and not tapering enough. You want to taper it enough to where you don't get the rebound action on it. When you shoot a sling, if it's not balanced properly and you got too much weight on your release cord, there's going to be this reverberation that happens, and that's where you want to reduce it. You reduce the sling so it doesn't give you that reverberation. A lot of that energy gets shot out into the end of the sling, and what happens is it's got no place to go except come back, and then it ends up snapping you back in the finger. So an unbalanced sling is going to end up snapping you back in the finger. A lot of my slings at the start would do that, and this is the reason why this was suggested to me. So, thanks again, Mitch Mercer. But as I had said before, there's a fine line. How much do you want to reduce it? That's up to you. It depends on how you shoot and what you like. Me personally, I would call this probably like a 50% reduction. It wouldn't be more than that. So I got to check this. When I get to 15, or a little bit past 14, I got to do it again. We're at 14 now, so I can go ahead and do it. I'm just going to go ahead and put one more knot in it and then do it. Okay, so here we are at 14. So you're going to have a total of 8, 12, 15, 18, and 21, a total of 5 reductions. So same thing, I'm going to start out. I need a little bit more light. Let me grab a lamp. There we go, now you can probably see it better. I should use the light to start with. Anyways, I know this is hard to see, but you've already lost 2 threads out of here now. So you got to be real careful on which ones you pull. You don't want to pull the longest ones. The ones that are exposed the most, you don't want to pull. You want to leave those, okay? because if you pull those, this is what will cause a separation. Now, I was pulling a certain thread, but this is the thing. You want to pull the ones that are still intact. So I see 3 right here that I can still pull, right? I'm going to want to leave one of those. So I'm going to pull one of these. I'll just pull the top one, okay? Well, it's the same thing. I'm just going to pull this out, milk that side, pull it out, milk that side. Okay? As I said before, each one of these has a bunch in there. So it's not just one thread, it's a strand. And I'm going to cut it right here. Close as I can. Discard the waste. Tie the top up, go to the second one. Pulling a single strand. Cut that. Tie it up. Third strand, a little farther down. You're looking for a group of strands that are consistent. Remember what I said, take your time, because if you grab more than one, it's going to cause issues. Same thing, pull your strand, milk it. Cut it off. Tie it up. Now when you're doing this, it's okay if you don't get all of it, because when you start to pull, the rest of it will come up. So you're better off pulling less than more. And as you do this, it'll get easier. Okay, so all of them been reduced again. I'm going to go ahead and undo it. Undo my last half hitch. Just check for that line real quick so it's nice and even. And there's my top knot. You want to go back to the same original pattern. If it doesn't look right, just undo more until you see it, until it does look right. Because, you know, one mistake I've made before a couple times was not getting the exact strand. You start to braiding and you get down here and you're like, wait, this doesn't look... You can see that the pattern is not even, so you want to make sure that pattern stays the same. Now, if you look at the Kevlar, it's starting to get quite a bit looser. So make sure that you do this nice and tight. I'm going another 3 inches down to 18. And I'll stop around 17 and do another reduction. You may not be able to see this on camera, but it's quite a bit thinner than it is up here. It's probably been reduced at least by, I don't know, 30%. Somewhere around there. Let's keep going with the round braid. And make sure it's super tight. I'm keeping all these pieces of rope in my hand nice and tight, and I'm putting a lot of pressure with my fingers. You probably can't see that, but I am. I'm keeping quite a bit of pressure on this thing. So the next knot will be around 17 inches. Or its stopping point anyways. Now one thing I wanted to mention while I'm doing this, if for some odd reason you pull more than one thread, you're just gonna have to see when you get down to the next one which thread's the smallest one. If you took too many threads out, you may want to consider not pulling a thread out of that one particular strand of rope, because you've already pulled two out. If you've done that by accident, you may want to not pull it on the next one. I'm almost at 18 now, so I'll go ahead. Screw it, I'll start it right now. I'm just going to do the half hitch across, pull it up. You just don't want to let this thing unravel as you're doing it. I mean, it's really not going to do it much unless you do something wrong, but you just want to keep it together. So now I'm going to start with my next reduction. So you can look in here and see which ones are together. I have two right here, so I know I'm safe to pull one of these. So I'm going to take one of these strands out here. As I had said before, if you pull the wrong one, or you pull the ones that are real loose, you're probably going to get a separation on your Kevlar, and you won't have one rope. You'll have two ropes, and it'll make it much more difficult. So be careful not to do that. Right now it's still retaining it. It's getting loose, but it's still one piece. Same with this one here. There's two. I'm going to grab one of them. I did that one a little close, but probably could have gone a little bit farther down. Pull it out and then milk it. Discard it. Throw it up. Okay, so there's only going to be one more reduction. Go ahead and undo this. This last reduction is going to be the one where you got to watch out, because you might pull the wrong one, and then you're going to end up with 2 strands. And like I said, it's a real pain once it splits off into 2 strands. So, okay, keeping that line. Okay, there's the top knot right there. And I'm going to start, once again, another 3 inches. This one will be at 21. At this point, you can see the braid and the knot. This portion of the rope is quite a bit smaller. So you're definitely over 30%. You're probably closer to 40% at this point. Okay, I want to be at 21 inches on the next reduction. I have another 1.5 inches. Okay, so now, same thing. I'm going to half hitch over to the side. Now you can pull this pretty tight, but I don't recommend doing it too tight. Most of the time, though, with Kevlar, the problem with Kevlar is Kevlar doesn't want to hold knots. You tie a knot in Kevlar, and it's not going to want to stay. So that's why I say you can probably pull it tight, and it's not that big a deal. Now I'm going to get down to the last reduction. Now, if you did everything right, all your ropes are going to stay intact like this. If you pulled the wrong ropes or you did something off, you're going to end up having a little bit of a struggle, because it's really hard to get down to the last reduction. So I'm going to just look. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to pull the loosest ones. You see a long strand, you don't want to pull it. So you want to try to find a strand that's in here. Okay, so I'm going to try to find the one. I still have 2 strands in there. It's, like I said, this is the part that's tricky, so you don't want to pull the wrong strand. You want to pull one of the tighter strands. I'm going to pull this one and hope it's the right one. Right there. Okay, that's good. Now, it's getting loose, but like I said before, it's intact, so pull the right one and you won't have to worry about your rope spreading into 2 pieces. Because like I said, that's a real pain. So I suggest just trying to find the tightest strand in there and pull that one. Because you'll know right away as soon as you pull that, if you pull the right one or not. Okay, there's 2. At this point, I'm not really worried about making it vary. I just want to make sure I pull the right strand, so. that one up. Last one. Okay, so successful. Everything is intact in one string still. It might be a little loose, but it's all together. We'll cut that one off. Okay, so I'm going to reset this so you can see it better. Not quite getting it on camera too well here, so I'm just going to pull this up a little farther. Take out all your knots. And your half hitch. You want to be careful not to separate your strands now. Okay? Here's my line. Looking for that top knot. Okay, now I'm back on track. Keep going. All right, now that you've done all your reductions, what you want to do is from the base of where your cup starts, to the end of where you're going to finish this thing out at, it's going to be 25 3/4. So the first portion was 24. This portion will be 25 3/4. Where you stop. So you just keep going until you get to 25 3/4 from the bottom of your cup. Just keep your braid nice and tight. Don't worry about the screwing too much. The third one, I'll just go ahead and do a half hitch and tie it off right there. Now, just make it tight enough to hold it, because you're going to undo that later. Now, I can go ahead and show you the difference in size. You can see it's about 50%. So this is quite a bit smaller. It's about half the size of that other cord. So it's about a 50% reduction. And that's going to conclude part 2. I'm going to go ahead and on part 3, I'm going to show you how to wrap this cup and finish this off. So you're almost there. This is still, the last part's still pretty difficult. So that's about it. So hope you enjoyed that. And well, that's going to take you about 3 hours. And I mean, if you can do it really fast, great. But other than that, we'll see you in part 3. Have a good one.